So listen closely. There's some pretty important information here. I want to welcome Tom Fessler from DBI, Michelle Langley, and Ria. Please do your name for me.
Ria Aguinaldo.
Okay. First, we're going to start with our now famous raffle.
First one is A3A7293 8387293. Second time, A3A7293 8387293. Last call, A3A7293. Second one, A3A7343. A3A7343 8387343. The third one, A3A7352 8387352. Third one, A3A7357 8387357. The last one, A3A7366 8387366.
This is a group. This is a good group. We were 5 for 5. Anyway, Tom, start us off, please.
Okay. Let's see. Notes. I want to make sure everybody can hear me. Okay. All right. Thank you for coming this afternoon. Okay, so the program for the ABE, the program objectives are to. Oh, my name is Thomas Fessler, Building Inspector with the Department of Building Inspection. So the ABE program objectives are to create greater access for goods and services, to ensure safe and usable entrances, to reduce liability by eliminating barriers to access under state and federal laws, try to cut down on the drive-by lawsuits, help property owners better comply with existing construction-related accessibility requirements. These are the partnering agencies and the roles in the process. The building inspection is the program administrator. SF Planning reviews any alterations to storefronts. Public Works deals with any changes to the public way. The Access Appeals Commission reviews and ratifies technical infeasibilities and unreasonable hardships. Office of Small Business is a small business resource, and the Mayor's Office on Disability has the technical expertise relating to ADA Title II. Okay, the background of it is Ordinance 5116 requires property and business owners to make all primary entrances from the public way to their business accessible for people with disabilities. So this only pertains to places of public accommodation. A place of public accommodation generally is a business where the public will enter the building to obtain goods and services. Examples of places of public accommodation include banks, daycare centers, health clubs, hotel, motel, offices, restaurant, bars, any retail space, personal services like nail salons or barber shops. This ordinance applies only to the primary entrance to the building. It doesn't, once you enter the building, it does not address any restrooms, any other doors, any other path of travel within the building. If you provide parking, it would be the path of travel, the parking, and the path of travel to the primary entrance. Okay. I want to point out that compliance with this ordinance, since it's only addressing the primary entry, it doesn't relieve tenant or property owners' responsibilities to comply with other federal and state laws. Okay, so there could be elements beyond the front door that you're obligated to upgrade over a period of time to meet these requirements. This ordinance only refers to the primary entry. Now, there are examples of primary entries. You could have more than one primary entry. Let me step back again. So say you have an office building, okay? It's a place of public accommodation. You have the primary entry, it goes to the elevator lobby. You stop at the primary entry. It doesn't have to do with the elevator or any other doors and tenant spaces up on the 5th floor. It's just the primary entry from the public way or parking into the building. Now, there could be multiple primary entries. Okay, so you have the office building scenario. You're going into the lobby. On the ground floor next to it is a sandwich shop. It has its own entry from the public way into that tenant space. That would be a primary entry because it has its own path of travel from the public way to an entry that's serving that tenant space. And many times that tenant space you're not even connected back into the office building. Okay, so that's what this ordinance addresses. The ordinance was amended, extending the timeline 6 months. It eliminated the administrative fee for the compliance checklist. It requires the property owners to provide a 30-day notice to building tenants prior to any work being performed. And it qualifies under Category 1 if any of the following descriptions apply. Building owners mandated to meet earthquake retrofit, electing to comply with the ordinance requirements prior to the program's compliance deadline. So if you have to come in and you're doing a soft story retrofit and you have a primary entry going into a place of public accommodation, and under that retrofit you're upgrading the entry to meet the code, you don't need to fill out the compliance checklist. You can just refer to that building permit saying, hey, I'm creating a compliant entry under the retrofit, and then the other is basically the same thing, but it doesn't have the retrofit part. It's, say you're doing a renovation to a new restaurant and you're upgrading the front door and you've already applied for it and you're under construction. Once that building permit has been signed and completed, you can use that permit number as to show compliance, and you'll be a Category 1 and you're done with complying with the ordinance. here's the different compliance ordinance categories. Category 1, in compliance, you fill that out, you're done. Category 2, you have some barriers, but you don't have any steps. You can see there's different timelines for compliance. Category 3, you have 1 step. Category 4, you have more than 1 step. You can see that the dates become longer for compliance, the more difficult compliance becomes. Okay, so the steps of program compliance. The first step is to determine whether your building entrance is exempt from the ordinance. Step 2, if the building is, and I'll get into what an exemption is in the future. Step 2, if the building's not exempt, then you get a CAST inspector or a licensed design professional to come out and survey the entrance. That survey, they'll fill out the category checklist, and that will create a classification whether you're type 2, type 3, type 4. Step 4, you file for the building permit, and step 5, you do the work, get it inspected, and at the end get a certificate of final completion. Which forms do I need to fill out? Okay, so Form A is a pre-screening form. It's trying to determine whether or not your building is exempt. If you're not exempt, then you go to Form B, which is the category checklist form, which needs to be filled out by either a CAST inspector or a licensed design professional, either an architect or an engineer. Okay, so here are the types of the exemptions. So this is where if you're exempt from the program, if your building entrance, if the building you're in is newly constructed, okay, after January 1, 2002, we assume that the entrance is going to be compliant, so you're exempt. Religious organizations are exempt. Bona fide private clubs are exempt. Now you have to remember both the religious organization and the bona fide private club, if they use the hall and they rent it out to the public, then they are no longer exempt. Okay, you're no longer a private club, and the same thing with the religious exemption. If you're, if you have bingo night and if the public can come, then that entry to the room that they're having the bingo, that would be a primary entrance, and that would have to be part of an ordinance. There are places, there are commercial buildings that they're not a place of public accommodation. Okay, I can think of something in the topic now is say marijuana dispensary. That would be a place of public accommodation because people would be going in, but the warehouse out where they're growing it and it's not part of the dispensary, that even though it's a commercial space, it's not a place of public accommodation because the public isn't going there. Okay, or say some of the auto body repair places, they might have an office where you come in, you drop off your car, that would be a place of accommodation, but across the street is where they have the paint shop and all that. The paint shop building is not a place of public accommodation because the public isn't going there. Okay, so completing the pre-screening form, attachment A. Okay, this is the form that's saying that you're exempt. Who can complete the form? The owner of the building, the tenant, or authorized agent. There's no cost or fee to process the form. Okay, so completing category checklist compliance form, that's attachment B. Okay, who can fill out the form? Again, this is when it gets more technical in nature, all right? This is when they're doing a survey of the entrance You need to have a California licensed architect, licensed engineer, or a certified access specialist. That needs to be signed by one of the above and the agent and owner of the property. The cost of filing the form. Originally, you might get some information saying that there was a fee. The fee was waived under the amendment before, so there is no cost to filing the pre-screening, the category checklist compliance form, attachment B. Okay, so categories 1 and 2. Category 1 is a building that has no steps and is compliant with the requirements of the ordinance. Okay, your category 1, you're compliant, you're done. Okay, category 2 is a building entrance that has no steps, but there could be other barriers such as non-compliant hardware, door opening clear width, lack of maneuvering space, the power to operate the door. That would be a category 2. You'd have to fill out the compliance checklist, and then category 3 is buildings with 1 step, and category 4 is buildings with more than 1 step. So in summary, the form type, pre-screening form attachment A determines whether you're exempt. If you're exempt, you're done. Okay? Category compliance checklist form, attachment B, identifies which compliance category the building is in, provides proposed remediation measures, and then you have the action required, you have to complete and submit within the deadline set forth in 1107D for the building permit, and proceed with applying for the building permit and just the work and inspection process. Okay, so that's the first part of it. I'll pass it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Tom.
Are we doing questions at the end, or? Well, I don't want to go too long. I'll take 2 questions. How's that? Well, okay. I mean, there's going to be questions at the end, but okay. Do you want to ask one question real quick, the gentleman? Okay. I'll be around after too, but there is a question and answer at the end.
All right, let's move on, and maybe we can do the bulk of the questioning at the end. All right, thanks, Tom. My name is Michelle Langley, and I am a senior planner with the planning department, a senior preservation planner. And I'm here just to briefly outline my department's role as part of the ABE program. And so, though planning doesn't necessarily review plans for ADA compliance, we play an important role early on in the design process to provide some initial feedback by identifying any essential historic resources that might be affected as part of your ABE storefront work to meet the accessibility requirements. Our voluntary checklist is meant to be a tool for the property owner, tenant, or designer to seek accessibility guidance prior to submitting a permit application to modify an existing commercial storefront. And it also helps us document the process. After consulting with the designer to determine the scope of work required for barrier removal, the voluntary checklist should be completed and reviewed with a planner at the planning information counter. And if the building is more than 50 years old, which most buildings in the city are, a preservation planner should review the completed checklist, and we can provide feedback. We have many copies of the checklist at our planning table if you're interested in picking one up later. Along with a completed checklist, we would ask that you bring any photos, drawings, or notes documenting the existing conditions of your storefront and sidewalk. Any documentation provided will help to inform the planner's decision-making process. So briefly, I will go over filling out our checklist, which again is a voluntary tool. The checklist first asks you to identify if any of the following four features of your storefront are included in the scope of work. So we're primarily concerned with entrances, power door operators and push buttons, level changes and sidewalks, and storefront system and other building features. We would ask you to note if any architectural storefront features, such as the tile down below your glass of the storefront or transom window, are being proposed for alteration as part of your upgrades. Planning department staff will meet with you and provide any initial recommendations or feedback, and may suggest project modifications. If at all possible, door entrances should not be modified so as to retain their original location, rhythm, and storefront configuration, particularly if there is a bank of storefronts that have the same entrance pattern. If modifications are required, alterations should be implemented that minimize the loss of historic material. It is important to note that buildings built prior to the passing of the ADA are not exempt from compliance with the ordinance. Some properties may qualify for use of the California Historical Building Code and may be able to demonstrate other acceptable means to meeting accessibility requirements. And just briefly to recap, the voluntary checklist was developed by the planning department in an effort to identify any preservation issues up front. Approvals should be able to be done over the counter by a preservation planner. I'm typically at the counter at least once a day, and I'll also be available at the Planning Information Center outside of preservation hours. Some complex projects may require an intake, specifically if your building is subject to Article 10 or 11 of the Planning Code. They would require intake and an entitlement, either a certificate of appropriateness or a permit to alter. However, I wanted to share that we're currently working on planning code amendments to Article 10 and 11 that would allow for accessibility upgrades to be approved over the counter without an entitlement, and those changes should be rolling out towards the end of the summer. And unfortunately, Kevin wasn't able to join us today. He's out sick. But I believe Tom is going to cover the Public Works part of our presentation briefly.
Thank you. Okay, just want to make sure. So yeah, it was kind of dropped on me kind of quick today, but that's okay. So here's a PowerPoint from Public Works. You can go to the SF Better Streets plan. That's sfbetterstreets.org. That's SF Better Streets is one word. The Public Works is concerned about having an accessible route along the sidewalk, that being part of an accessible entrance component. There's various building code information sheets that they list, and we use those as equivalent facilitation for providing power door operators in lieu of level landings at doors and not having the pull side clearances. You can always go to information sheet DA17, that's in the department website. It has the building entrance program. It has all the logic behind it. It has a checklist. It has just about everything. It's quite a document. It's probably about 34 pages long, I think. If you want to look for in the actual building code itself, it would be in Chapter 11B of the California Building Code that has to do with accessibility requirements for places of public accommodation. There's the public work requirements. They have different zones that they talk about, the frontage zone, throughway zone, finishing zone. We can all see that. I think everybody's got, if you have that PowerPoint, you'll have those drawings in the PowerPoint. There's just more of an explanation of those zones and the SF Better Street sidewalk plan zones, and I can't really speak too much to this because I haven't really, I don't work for Public Works. And then there's specialized zones and elements, the bus stop, passenger loading, unloading zone, accessible spaces, driveways, utility vaults, and the sub-sidewalk basement. There's a drawing of different slopes at trying to create an accessible entry. And there, you can see the kind of level landing and then the throughway zone. That's what he's trying to depict with the blue. There it is again, the plan view looking down at it. He gets quite technical here, and he's just trying to show these level landings as the slope goes along and then kind of levels off for a little bit at the entry and then starts sloping down again. Here's a picture of it. That's what they're talking about as a vault. That would be a vault for like a PG&E vault. I'm sorry, PG&E vault where the metal is there. You can see the entry where the sidewalk comes in. It's got a bit of a slope and then it kind of levels off for the entry and then starts sloping down again. There's a mathematical depiction of what the picture was. There's other examples of entries. There's an example of having the slope 2% passway zone in the middle there. You've got a bit of a slope coming up, so you have a non-compliant entry at the door. You can see this power actuator that is vertical. Sometimes you see the two buttons, but this is one that just is a vertical actuator. So you have the level landing out in the sidewalk, the accessible path there. You can hit that power door operator, and we can approve that over the counter on the building side. I mean, you have to talk to planning on the change of the facade, but that should be something that we could administratively approve as a equivalent facilitation for not having the level landing at the exterior of the door. There's some other examples. It's kind of a new building, so I mean that would be exempt under the ordinance. Anyways, and this is a much more elaborate example. I don't think we're going to run into this too much of a small business providing this type of sidewalk improvement. Here's just an example of him saying it's too steep away from the for the sidewalk itself, that he would rather have the incline recessed back so you have an accessible path on the sidewalk, and then you could use the power door operators in lieu of level landing to go in. Okay, so back to the building department. This is just kind of a drawing of, okay, you've had the checklist, now you're going to apply for the permit. Okay, so you go to the first floor public counter. They give you the routing slip. They check the building for complaints. If everything's okay there, they send you up to the fifth floor. The fifth floor determines which routing, which departments are required for issuing of the permit. So if you're doing some type of alteration to the facade of the building, obviously you go to the planning department. But if you're not, then it's not required to go to the planning. If you're doing some work out in the public way and the sidewalk, then you'd have to go to Public Works, and then you would always go to building to get a building permit. If you're asking for a technical infeasibility or unreasonable hardship, the building department will review that. If we agreed with it, we would approve it, but you would still need to get ratification from the Access Appeals Commission if there is some type of difference of opinion between the building department and the applicant, and we wouldn't approve something. You could always appeal that to the Access Appeals Commission to override what the building department is asking you to do. You can always appeal to the Access Appeals Commission, and once you get the approval from there, you go to central permit, pay, and you get the issuance. You do the construction, whatever the required inspections, you get your final inspection, and at the end of the final inspection, you'll get the issuance of the certificate of final completion saying that you've complied with the ordinance. Okay, so this is where it gets this is where you get a lot of questions, a lot of people. This is the more difficult part of trying to comply with the ordinance and accessibility in general with existing buildings. The building code recognizes that not all entries will become fully accessible. Okay. The purpose of the ADA and the building code is to provide reasonable accommodations, reasonable access to places of public accommodation. Okay, the purpose is not to unduly burden property owners, tenants. Okay, it is to try to provide as much access to places of public accommodation that is reasonable. Okay, and I know when you start saying what's a reasonable accommodation, that's where we can all agree. Well, if we change out the knob hardware on the front door and we put lever hardware on there, that's a reasonable accommodation. Everybody can afford that. Okay, it's just when we start going further and further away from that is when you start saying, okay, when does it become unreasonable? Okay. You always have the owners always need to try to provide an alternate method of providing the good and service if we do approve a unreasonable hardship and not have, say, vertical access to the second floor. Okay. So there's a couple different types of, you have the structural, technical, and feasibility, and that can be reviewed and approved by the building department because the Access Appeals Commission doesn't really have a structural expertise. So most common on that presently, well, that doesn't really have to do with the entrance. I guess some of the entrances you'll see that the column, the kind of the older market, first story. A lot of times it's terrazzo, and you have that one post, and you're not going to get the clearance at the door because if you take out the post, it's holding up the building. That's a structural, technical, and feasibility. Okay. Non-structural would be if you, if to comply with it, you would throw off exiting of the tenant space for the people coming down, that the only place to be able to go to create the pull side clearance on the door would be to affect exiting from the people above or the building above. That would be kind of a non-structural. That would have to be approved by DBI and ratified by the Access Appeals Commission. And then you have the concept of unreasonable hardship. So, you know, there's a few different examples, and of course we have the equivalent facilitation. I don't want to go past that too fast, but that's where you have the power door operators that we can approve without the Access Appeals Commission, and that would be considered, you're providing access. Say you don't have the pull side clearance on the door, you're supposed to have 18. If it's swinging out on an exterior door, you're supposed to have 24 inches on the pull side clearance. Okay, well, we have a lot of the entrances where it's kind of alcoved in, it's got that little diamond kind of thing going in. You're gonna have to alter the front entry. The planning department's not gonna like that, because we have a series of those, because we want to keep that consistent, and I think it looks cool too. So, hey, we'll put a power door operator. Okay, you're providing equivalent facilitation, meaning the people with disabilities can still get in, and you're not altering that. We can just approve that, and that you could potentially be a Category 1 at that point. Okay. Okay, and then, you know, there's examples. One of the examples, you have to think, when we start talking about unreasonable hardships, okay, it's, you know, what is the tenant space? How many people are going there? How large is it? Who owns it? Okay, is it a huge nightclub with a dance floor? Or is it a nail salon, okay, where at the second story, where you have, you know, outside that primary entry, you open it up and you've got stairway going up, okay? So most likely you're going to be able to get unreasonable hardship if there's some type of non-compliance at the door. Okay, again, it's an entry door, so you don't really have to worry about the stairway, okay? But it doesn't make a lot of sense to go and spend, say, $50,000 to change the steps and alter the landing and make the door on the, you know, the pull side and the interior of the door that you have wheelchair clearance, because right behind that you have a series of stairs. Okay, that starts when it starts getting kind of silly. Okay, so that's why there is unreasonable hardship. Okay, and then at that time, then you start looking at equivalent. How can you provide equivalent facilitation? Perhaps you refer people to another nail salon that is accessible. Okay, or say you have a dry cleaner. I've had an example of a dry cleaner. The person sent me a picture. Okay, it's a dry cleaner. It has one step. Well, what do you do with the dry cleaner? Okay, you drop off your laundry, they dry clean it, and then you pay them. I mean, you don't even stay. 100% of it is off-site. Okay, so you can either have delivery service, you can ring the bell and have curbside service, have the phone number there. Okay, so you have to think of, you got to step back and think, what situation do we have? Okay, and would it be unreasonable to try to provide a ramp to a counter? That's not why we're here. Okay. Prior to permit issuance, if your permit contains a technical infeasibility on reasonable hardship request, it's approved by DBI. You need to get ratification from the AAC on the plans. Please contact the secretary of the AAC to set up a hearing schedule. I am the secretary of the Access Appeals Commission. That's my contact information. The normal, regular meetings of the Access Appeals Commission are the second and fourth Wednesday of each month at 1:30 at City Hall. Okay, so I'm done with that, and we'll pass it on to Ria.
Okay. All right. So my name is Ria Aguinaldo. I'm the assistant project manager at the office of, at the Office of Small Business. And what I'm going to do with my couple of minutes here is I'm going to sort of take a step back and provide some information about sort of the background of the ordinance, what the city's intent is in terms of the ordinance itself, and then I'll also talk about some resources to help navigate and help property owners and businesses going forward. So the first slide here is just the city. The city is taking a big step forward with this ordinance, which was authored by Supervisor Tang, in helping property owners better comply with federal and state disability access laws, and really ensuring that people with disabilities have similar access to the products and services in San Francisco. A big common misconception when it comes to ADA compliance or accessibility is if a business or a building has been like that for years, 50, 70, 80 years, that there's some sort of grandfathering, that because that's the way that the building was built, that they are sort of removed from their liabilities in terms of ADA and making sure that that entryway is compliant. That's sort of a really common misconception, which is completely false. So it's important to know that although our city is built the way it is, it's very interesting, our topography. We have steep streets, hills, narrow sidewalks, mixed-use buildings. All of those things do not exempt San Francisco from the federal ADA, which is, of course, it's a wide-sweeping civil rights law that's been in existence for a very long time. So what we've seen and sort of the impetus to passing this ordinance, Supervisor Tang, as well as us at the Office of Small Business, is we've seen a rise in what they call drive-by lawsuits. So people that, many of them have disabilities, obviously, but there are other sort of sharks out there that have driven by San Francisco small businesses, and they'll see a step and they'll take that as an opportunity to bring a suit against that business owner or that property owner, saying that they're in violation of the federal ADA. With those lawsuits, those are dealt with in civil courts. So there are a number of complexities that sort of overlay different things that are considered, specifically financial resources and the ability for that business or that property owner to comply. But it's really important to note that with this ordinance, it overlays with laws of state and federal that have been in existence for a very long time. So with that being said, that's why all of our organizations, the 5 or 6 agencies that are working together to make sure that that you're prepared and that you understand the process as you're navigating through this ordinance. So a couple of resources that we offer in terms of for property owners and for businesses. The first is, of course, if your building has a place of public accommodation and you're not exempt from the ordinance, the first step is to hire a design professional or a CASP inspector to survey your entryway. We have on our website, on our ADA resources page, a list of certified access specialists that we've put together. It looks like that on the screen, and it looks like, wait, can you go back one? This one? It looks like this. There are about 100, I think it's about 120, 130 certified access specialists that are listed on this database. What we did to create this database is we actually took the state's, it's the Division of State Architects database that has 700 plus certified access specialists, and our office just filtered it to show those that chose yes to are available for inspections and that they listed San Francisco as a service county. So just to clarify, our office did not vet this list. So on the next slide, I'll talk about how you as a property owner can sort of doing your due diligence when you're looking for a design professional, what type of questions you should be asking, provide some guidance in making sure that you find one that fits your needs, but also very experienced here in San Francisco. So this slide here, as I mentioned, it provides some tips. So as you're searching for a certified access specialist or a licensed design professional, one point that I'll note just to sort of differentiate between a certified access specialist or a CASP versus a licensed design professional, that could be a licensed architect or an engineer, is the knowledge and expertise in disability access laws and which the certified access specialist they have with that certification. So a certified access specialist or a CASP, they have passed a very rigorous exam through the state that tested them both in an open book and a closed book format on their knowledge about federal and state access laws, about building codes. And while design professionals, while architects or engineers can also be very credible and knowledgeable about those laws, without that sort of stamp of the CASP, the certification, just make sure that you're asking your design professional, that you're asking your architect how familiar they are with compliance with ADA and accessibility. So a couple of points to sort of to continue on that note: price, thoroughness, location, and availability. Keep in mind, these are private sector consultants, private sector entities. So like any business or like any property owner, you shop around, call around. Now that we have the extension, meaning the first deadline is now January 1st, you have some time. So ask around to any other businesses in the area if they've ever worked with a contractor or an architect. Reach out to our office. You have sort of some time to make sure that the person that you're working with, you feel comfortable with trusting them to comply with this ordinance. Again, familiarity with state and federal accessibility laws. This one, the third bullet point down, is very, very important. You want to make sure that this person has experience with the San Francisco Building Code, plannings, historic preservation, public works, sidewalk modifications. As you'll note on this database, you have some design professionals that have listed that they service all counties across the state. I don't know about you, but I would sort of be hesitant in choosing someone that, or I would assume that they wouldn't have full expertise in every county across the state, since just the way that the topography is in the city is very different from others. So just make sure that if you're choosing a design professional that is out of San Francisco or sort of farther away, that you're really asking if they've worked here in San Francisco. Maybe ask if they've done inspections or CASP inspections, or had number of contracts in San Francisco. And then I'll go to the next slide. So more resources. If you're looking for local licensed architects, there's a association called the American Institute of Architects, or AIA. They have a database on their homepage where you can type in your zip code and it'll pull up local architects for you to reach out to. California Certified Access Specialists, which I went over. The Division of State Architect, they are the state entity that certifies CASPs. So they do have resources on their website as well. Or if you're interested in seeing that full database of 700 plus, you can also go on their website. And then in terms of ADA compliance, navigating through state and federal ADA law, accessibility laws, a number of resources there as well. And then I also want to point out, our office put together this Accessible Business Entrance Program guide for small business owners. I think it's pretty, it lays out the main components that businesses need to consider as they are thinking about how the ordinance impacts them. And then the last note that I'll end on is we realize that when it comes to ADA and accessibility, that there is a very unique relationship between the tenant and the landlord in terms of who is actually responsible for it. So we see in commercial lease provisions, the landlord will sort of state in the lease that it's on the tenant to comply with local and state and federal ADA or accessibility laws. It's important to note that the ordinance, the way that this ordinance is written, the property owner is responsible for compliance. So, sort of ending on that note, if you're a business owner and you have been handed the responsibility of complying with this ordinance by your landlord, by your property owner, our office is available to help you navigate what that would mean. Take a look at your lease, see what protections you might have. We also have legal, financial resources and tax resources that we can go through if there are other questions. And then on DBI's website, that's where you'll find all of the information that Tom went over, the compliance checklist, the information sheet, pre-screening form, and the technical specs guidelines. And then to close out, here's the contact list for the program, all of the leads for each of the departments. And feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Again, DBI is the program administrator for this, so they do have their counter, which was window 8 at 1660 Mission.
Yes, it's window 8 on the first floor at 1660 Mission.
Yep. So with that, we'll take questions.
Yeah, there's one thing I did mean to mention. Obviously the ordinance is just towards the primary entrance, but if you are going to hire a CAS or a design professional, I think it would be wise for you to have them survey your entire tenant space just to see what other potential non-compliant issues you have when it comes to the built environment, okay, when it comes to accessibility. Now, the ordinance is just because you have this person there who is very knowledgeable about this. Obviously, the ordinance, again, is just the front entry, okay? But if you're going to pay somebody, maybe pay them a little bit more and get a full CAS or a full survey from the licensed professional about your potential liabilities in the, at the tenant space.
Thank you. Michelle, Rhea, Tom, new terrain, so we appreciate your time. We have time for some questions. Please queue up at the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Hi. If a business has two entrances, one has a step and one is clear to walk through, do we have to fix the second one, or one will be enough?
I would say that it would most likely be sufficient to have directional signage from the non-compliant entrance to show where the compliant entrance would be. Okay, so you just put an arrow with the person with the ISA. You might even put some language on it, accessible entrance on Irving Street, or if it's a corner lot, something like that. I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Hi, if you had your business remodeled, and you've used certified architects, you've gone through planning commission, everything's been checked, and you've had a CASP certification, how would you classify that? Would you classify that as an exempt, or would you still have to go through all the screens on your different categories?
It would be a category 1. Okay, if you look at the ordinance, and it's something that that isn't in the pre-screening form, that I'm kind of new to the program to a degree. That
I think we're all in that boat together.
But needs to be okay. Yes, if we have a permit where that's been designed by a licensed architect and it addresses the entry and it's been finalized by the building department, I think we'll be able to just reference that building permit number and say that it's a category 1. The way the amendment to, when I was going over, if you have a soft story that's going on right now, or an active permit that's going on right now that is creating a compliant entry, why should we have to go out and survey it again and pay somebody to survey it when we're building it?
Right.
It's creating. Okay, so that's one thing that we need to address and make it simpler for property owners to.
So on the form, you would
Well,
recommend just referencing we had building
Yes, and
permit
we need to,
123
yes,
or
right.
whatever.
The amendment needs to catch up, the form needs to catch up with the amendment that was passed.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I have 3 questions. Did you finish passing out the Chinese version, or is there one available? I don't.
I think there is one available.
Okay, yeah. If so, I'd like to have a copy.
Okay.
So my next question is, did DBI send out, such notices to all affected property owners? It looks like some got it and some didn't. And if they didn't, should they still fill out one of those forms?
I would, if you didn't get it and you think you should have gotten it, then you should, I would contact the building department and, okay, because the list of people that we've sent out the form to, not the form, but the notice to, was taken off the business licensing database.
I see.
Okay, so we do have some people that are getting it that, they shouldn't have gotten it. Not that many, and we're missing some potentially.
So it seems to me that buildings built after 2002 should have complied with this excess, right?
Correct.
So if that is the case, wouldn't it save DBI a lot of time, so people don't have to fill out the form and go through all that? It seems to me it's already a given, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about that myself.
Yeah, I was saying you guys are busy enough, so I'm just curious.
Well, it's just a form that you fill out and send in and sign.
Still.
That you're I'm not really sure the answer to that question.
I just think it's too
no, I
obvious.
understand that. I get, I'm not a computer programmer. You'd think that you would be able to go in and say, okay, I'll address it,
Okay, well, anyway, I just still do it, but I just want to save you guys some time, that's all, and us as well. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for the presentation today.
All right.
Question, it sounds like that not only the design professional should complete the DBI form, but if a automatic entry door opener is required, they should come up actually with a drawing for the installation of the door and the automatic opener. True or false?
I'm not. I think the planning department would want a drawing to see what the front, because you're doing kind of an alteration to the front entrance. Okay. So
Okay,
we just want to make sure. Okay, that and there's issues of how you mount the if you're going to do the actuator bar, it's pretty simple. But if you're doing the 2-bit buttons, there are limitations of where you mount that. We just want to make sure that we're doing it once, and it's always easier to correct things on paper than once you go out in the field and something's incorrectly installed.
That begs that you're suggesting then that any installation of automatic door opener would require a permit application.
Yes.
Okay, because it can be done for under $500, excluding the cost of the equipment.
I've heard very large. You're saying it's $500. I've had people say that it costs $10,000. Okay, it's okay. I mean, sometimes I know it gets very bureaucratic. Okay, that sometimes the paperwork can potentially be as close to the cost of actually doing the work, but documentation, I guess.
And also and I appreciate kind of your explanation here, because I have own a small building in San Francisco's Chinatown that has four business offices that do not accommodate the public. They're used by strictly as a general business office, and it sounds like those would be exempt.
Yes, if they're not having, okay, so even if you do meet clients, meet them at Starbucks, okay?
Yeah.
Don't have them come up to your office, then you
Right.
become a place of public accommodation. So there are people that they have an office space, but basically everything they do is online, over the phone, and if they do meet clients, maybe they go to their house, or they go out
Yep.
to lunch, the final sign their tax form or something along those lines.
Right, right. Thank you very much.
All right. Sorry.
Thank you. Just a clarification on businesses that are coming under this ordinance. A business that is strictly by appointment only or membership, does that fall within this reach?
Yes, I would say it would be okay
does.
because again, just because it's appointment only, you're still serving the general public. You're offering a good service. Okay.
But it could be a club, considered a club, or not?
Well, okay. Now that bona fide private club, okay. That and the religious exemption, that's kind of coming from the ADA, where you have just a private club that you have the private. If you read that bona fide private club, it's really a club where the people in the club have one particular interest. Say the San Francisco Motorcycle Club, and it's membership only. They don't lease out any of the space. They all have one common interest. They go on motorcycle rides, and then they have a clubhouse, and they don't lease it out to anybody for parties. Only their members or their guests go there. Then that would be a bona fide private club. Once you go and start leasing it to other people,
Right, but say
so
it's
the
like
same thing with
like a gym that has a private membership.
Yeah. Okay.
They're signing up.
Right.
They're
The gym,
agreeing.
Yes. The gym is not. Is a place of public accommodation.
It is, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, two last things. First of all, let's give these fine people a hand. Tom, Michelle, and Rhea, nicely done. And last, the biggest auction in town, our last raffle.
We can give 50
Wow. Boy, if you don't win something here,
As Oprah would say, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
oh, jeez, you did something wrong. Okay, thanks. Oh, that's all right.
First one, A3A7335. 8387335. Second time, A3A7335. 8387335. Last call, 8387335. 8387335. Second one, 8387360. 8387360. Second time, A3A7360. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam Lộc Lành. First one. Ba Sam Ba Ba Chat Sam Lộc Ba. A3A7368. Yes, 368. First, A3A7339. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam Sam Gao. Second time. A3A7. A3A7339. Last one. A3A7328. Ba Sam Ba. A3A7328. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 28. Last call. A3A7328. The sixth. A3A7292. Ba Sam Ba Chat 292. Second time. A3A7292. Ba Sam Ba Chat 292. Last call. A3A7292. Ba Sam Ba Chat 292.第七 the seven. A3A7355. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 55. I don't know where's it. A3A7382. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 82. I don't know where is it. A3A7375. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 75. A3A7375. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 75. Last call. A3A. A3A7338. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 38. Second time. A3A7338. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 38. Last call. A3A7338. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 38. And A3A7378. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 78. A3A7378. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 78. Last call. A3A7378. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 78. The next one. A3A7381. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 81. Second time. A3A7381. Ba Sam Ba Chat Sam 81. Last call. 8387381 8387381 Next one is 8387330 Next one is 8387372 8387372